for me, one of the highlights of today, and I am an absolute fan of this man, and I'm sure so are you are, and the work he does. And I was just with him very, very recently and put him on the spot when it was a review of the budget that we had gone through with the finance minister. And if it wasn't for him, I can promise you, the rhetoric would have just carried on, but he made it real. And that's what I think is so wonderful about our next speaker. He makes a situation real. He's on the ground, he is there, and he sees what's going on. And that's why he is here to share that with us. So there is an emerging global consensus on the importance of universal healthcare, but no consensus on how to actually achieve it. What we know is that providing universal health coverage is not the government's job alone. The private sector, beyond the healthcare industry players, also has a role to support efforts through corporate social investment initiatives, as does individuals with the resources and capacity. Well, joining us now is Gift of the Givers founder, Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman. Now, Dr. Sooliman has been running the Gift of the Givers Foundation since 1992, after giving up his career as a medical doctor to pursue the field of humanitarian aid. Today, the Gift of the Givers Foundation is the largest disaster response non-governmental organization of African origin. It has been instrumental in relief efforts to the value of over 4 billion rand over 29 years in 44 countries such as Iraq, Syria, Nepal, Mauritania, Tahiti, as well as locally here in South Africa. I know that they have just returned from, or if they're still there, I'm not too sure, but I do know that they were embarking on a journey to the Ukraine to try and assist there. Some of Dr. Sooliman's accolades include honorary doctorate from the University of Stellenbosch and Rhodes University, and the President's Order of the Star of South Africa. Dr. Sooliman looks at a humanitarian perspective on enabling universal healthcare. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you very much. Congratulations to Ahmed Manekar and Afrocentrics Group and all the speakers who have been speaking before me. And I'm going to, well, I think I'm the last speaker. But for setting up this at the most crucial time in the history of our country when it comes to health. I want to speak generally from my experience in the last 2 years during COVID itself. And while saying that, we need to understand that COVID is not the only medical problem that we have. The focus has been on COVID for the last 2 years, but in the process, we have forgotten about other medical conditions. But whilst unpacking that, I will speak from my own experience, what happened since March 2020. It was on the 15th of March when the President announced a national emergency or national disaster. 12 days later, the announcement was made for the lockdown for COVID-19 itself. And then the drama started. Procuring PPEs, setting up testing, providing the needs of the country, looking at oxygen, and we got involved immediately. Within the first 3 days, we managed to procure PPEs to start delivering to hospitals because there was a panic. We also set up 10 testing sites in the country, and we had mobile testing teams. But that already raises a question when you come to the problem of PPEs. When you're preparing for an event like COVID, which is so critical and where so many lives are lost, it shows how prepared are we in the system of health as a government, as a country. We were not prepared. We were not prepared at all in various ways. Our systems, our managements, our ethics, our values. I mean, how did 14.3 billion rand of PPEs disappear? At a time when money needs to be spent in sorting out the crisis in the hospitals, we have this disappearing. So there's definitely a problem of management within the health system and management within the country itself. Yes, there's a huge crisis regarding to health. But we can only address that crisis if we know what the problems are. The problems are manifold, but it doesn't mean they can't be solved. It requires several interventions from several levels, and this can be achieved. Whilst we have good people in the system, and you have bad people in the system, you have people like what's happening now with the summit, where people want to fix the system. So let's take the journey. We started off with PPEs distributing to different hospitals. We delivered it to 210 hospitals nationwide. We also started supplying pulse oximeters and non-contact thermometers. And as we were going along, we found there were problems long before COVID. COVID just exposed the underbelly of the crisis in the health system in the country. Now, we're not blaming any individual, any minister, any DG, any staff. It is a system that needs to be looked at. And the problem is within the system that when you say preparing for COVID, we were told we're going to lockdown to prepare the system. I mean, I think we were the only country in the world that shut the country down even before we had a wave. And when we did that shutdown, we said we're preparing, but we didn't prepare. I'm sorry, we didn't prepare. We didn't put enough oxygen in the hospitals. We didn't put enough medical personnel. COVID requires medical personnel, frontline support. The health system was already in crisis before COVID came. Doctors were exhausted, nurses were exhausted, people were despondent, and you found that they're working far more than the overtime they're supposed to work. Not only not being paid for it, that's not the important issue. You are exhausting and putting people at risk at themselves and putting patients at risk. That's why there's such a high litigation bill in the country for the health system. We were not working the system right. And you saw the exhaustion within the healthcare workers already within the first few weeks. There was anxiety, there was fear, they were seeing family members die, they were seeing friends dying. Whilst doing that, realizing that there was not enough resources and not getting timelessly to the people, people were dithering in the department, not getting the system sorted out, not getting things efficiently delivered on time and to the people in need. You left them to their own devices. Then, of course, you left them without healthcare support. And the other thing we realized as we were going through the hospitals, that people were scared to speak out. It's like they will be victimized. How can you have a system where people are talking the truth in the healthcare system that they should be victimized? What will the bosses say? What will senior management say? What will the provincial health say? What will the HOD say? What will the minister say? That is untenable. That is no excuse to behave in that way and give people fear. They already have the fear of dying themselves, their family members dying. They see people die in front of them, the depression and all that kind of difficulty, and you still put fear into them. You can't ask. No, you mustn't ask. You mustn't say there's no PPEs. You can't talk to the media. You can't say this. It's an embarrassment. So what if it's an embarrassment? Is the embarrassment more important or the saving of lives more important? And when we went into different provinces, we started exposing the systems. Not because we were there to create a problem or to create conflict or to show up anybody. That's not our job. We're not even interested in that. Our job is to save lives and to help people and to give them support and to give them initiatives and to give them motivation. To the point that when the healthcare workers were so down and out, what do? You can't give them any more support. You can't put any more oxygen. You can't give them any more machines. How do you encourage them? They've lost a wife, they've lost a partner, they've lost a colleague, they've lost a nurse. What you do? You do a simple thing. Hospital heroes. Everybody there can afford to buy some kind of a drink or a perfume or a body spray. They earn 100, 1,000, 80,000 rand a month. They're not short of money to buy those kind of items. But the fact that it's coming from outside means that the efforts are recognized, that the public is recognizing what they're doing and that they are serving as the interests of the country. So you intervene at the right time. But with the health system, you block them. You obstruct them. You shut them. You silence them. You are destroying them. These are people of experience, and they want to leave the public sector and go into the private sector. You want to run an NHI system with losing your best people. It can't work that way. You need to be open. You need to be upfront. You have to have dialogue. You have to have diplomacy. And you have to meet the needs of the healthcare workers who have striven in that facility, in that difficulty, and the difficult times to save those poor people who nobody's going to see to it. So we went. And whilst we were in the system, they told me they were using bin bags for theatre gowns. And I thought somebody was drunk when they told me that. No, it's true. Several hospitals told us we are using bin bags to cover in theatre. What kind of preparation is this? You're focusing on COVID, but the basic things in life you can't do. They needed scrubs. We produced 12,000 scrubs to give to the different hospitals. And then we started providing video laryngoscopes, high-flow nasal oxygen machines. And then came the best drama of all. The Department of Trade and Industry commissions the group, a scientific group, which composed the National Ventilator Group and also the SK telescope people, scientists to get together to design a ventilator. And they said, because it's understandable, a worldwide shortage of ventilators, everybody's catching whatever is coming from China and from everywhere else, so we don't have. Yes, very strategic decision. Commend government on that. Let's make our own, because we got the skills. We got great engineers. They get together, they make this machine. 20,000 CPAP machines they make. And then the CSIR, our own institution, produces this machine to specs. SAPRA approves it for limited use, temporary use in South Africa only, for COVID only, for limited registration. Solidarity Fund pays 250 million rand for those 20,000 machines, a very good investment because it's life-saving. It's November 2020. The machines are ready. They're supposed to go to the hospital. I got a call from the National Ventilator Group. They said, can you help us? So I said, help you for what? They said, we want to put the CPAP machines in the hospital. So I said, how difficult could that be? So they said, it's more difficult than you understand. So then they gave me an explanation. The Department of Trade and Industry, the Ventilator Group, CSIR, Solidarity Fund, SAPRA approved it. So I said, you're telling me that the government commissioned a machine, that the government people produced, that the government people manufactured, that the government approved, and the government paid for, and the government can't put into a government hospital? You can't be talking sense. They said that's exactly what we are telling you. We are blocked from taking these machines, and people were dying in their hundreds in the different hospitals. So I asked, where's the machine? They said it's in Cape Town. I was in Cape Town. So I said, send me the machine. So I went and put it in Tygerberg Hospital to test it out. The same afternoon, I went to Kailisha. The physicians, the intensivers said, this is a brilliant machine. It uses far less oxygen than the high-flow nasal oxygen machines. It's easy to use, doesn't give you anxiety to use the machine. And the same afternoon, they said, we saved quite a few people's lives with this machine. So I said, give me the machine. My teams went to work in Eastern Cape. In 24 hours, we delivered 900 machines to various hospitals in Eastern Cape. We didn't ask for anybody's permission. We didn't worry about what the health department was going to say. We didn't worry who's going to block it. We said, just put the machine on the patient, and if anybody wants to block it from the health department, they can go take it from the patient's face. They can go fetch the machine. We're not really worried. And because we saw the fear of the healthcare workers as the year months were going past, we created a CEO group. And on the CEO group, we said, who wants machines? We will defend you. And everybody put their hand up and said, we want these machines. They were not afraid to speak anymore. And we took the machines, and the greatest story for us was that Monday after we delivered the machines. The first CEO call was from Kala Hospital. And he said, for the first time since COVID started, my team are smiling this morning. So he explains further. He says, every Monday morning, we have the morbid responsibility of counting how many people died on Saturday and Sunday in our hospital. And Monday morning, we have to write down these grim stats. It's heartbreaking. They said for the first time in this whole time since 27 March, nobody died. We had the CPAP machines, a great product of South African invention, and put on those patients, and every single person survived on that machine. We got the same kind of messages from all the hospitals. We need to commend the healthcare workers. Outstripped, broken, tired, demotivated, depressed. They waited 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock at night for our teams. They were driving, crisscrossing Eastern Cape. And you know, Eastern Cape is big, and it's rural, and it's far, and the roads are all upside down. And now we've got, of course, all potholes to add to it in the country. So if we get to all the areas, and the CEO himself is waiting at 12 o'clock at night, not some junior staff. The CEO himself, congratulations to the healthcare workers in this country. They received the worker at the same time on the patient. And 40 hospitals call and say, you have saved enough lives. Or you saved many lives, not enough lives. It's never enough. You saved many lives. And as we progressed, we realized this is a time for private and public to work together. Yes, they always have to work together. So I phoned Solidarity Fund. I said, like people are dying in the public sector, people are dying in the private sector too. The advantage of this machine is you don't have to connect it in an ICU. Any hospital ward that has an oxygen point, you just connect it there. It's simple. You decentralize the system. You move them out of the ICU, you intervene early, and you put it in the ward. So I said, can I have a decision to give these machines to private hospitals for free? Don't ask me how much they're going to charge and how much money they're going to make out of this and who's going to benefit. I'm really not interested. And right now, we only need to save lives. It's upon the conscience and the ethics and the values of the private hospital, whether they want to charge or not, make an exorbitant amount of money. My job is to save lives. To the credit of the Solidarity Front, Within 15 minutes, they conversed within themselves and they sent a message back, it's a yes. We made the announcement and the different medical health groups started taking the machines. And as we started giving out the machines, I won't mention hospital groups, but the hospital groups started calling. And they said, thank you very much. We'll take 6 first because they come 3 in a box. We'll 6 first. Within minutes, they said, we will open up all our wards where we've got oxygen points. We will take 60 machines. What did that simple intervention do? It got private sector to buy in, to open up their hospital beds, so the pressure on the public sector is reduced. Because people were driving to hospitals in the second wave, in the beta wave, and they were dying in the car parks. They were dying in the car. They were coming late from home because the oxygen saturation dropped from 100 to 30 within seconds, and nobody knew. The smiling hypoxic just died in front of your eyes. And at that point, early intervention was important. So when the private hospital said, yes, we'll open it, so people who had had no chance to get to a public hospital found the money and went to the private sector. And we said, be lenient. Don't charge exorbitant prices. It's time to save lives. It's not time to make money. And to the credit of the lots of the private groups, they got involved, took the machines, spread it out. And one guy will phone, I got 5 hospital groups. Can you send 21 machines here, 17 here, 20 there? And we send the machines to everywhere. This was very good news, where the public sector government paid for a machine that could be used in the public sector, but private, what's the difference? Private people's lives got to be safe too. The private sector didn't have the machines. Money couldn't buy the machines. You couldn't get the machines anywhere in the world. You had them in South Africa. They were in the public sector hands, and they could be used in the private sector, 20,000 of them lying around. So, yes, we gave it to them, and they saved lives. It was huge achievement. It was something that showed that we could work together in something beyond COVID-19, because COVID-19 is not the only thing in life. There's much more disease patterns to deal with. And then whilst we were doing that, they would say, you know, we got no water. There's no water. We're talking about hygiene and safe practice and look after your hands, but we got no water in the hospital. What do we do? So we said, again, that's an intervention that government should do. We started putting boreholes in the different hospitals. And right now, we've put boreholes in 7 different hospitals in the Eastern Cape, besides what we've done before COVID and during COVID itself. And then you get an uncanny request from the richest city in the continent, not some God-forsaken place in the heart of Africa. This is a city called Johannesburg, where I'm standing right now. And you have 2 hospitals called Rahima Musa and Helen Joseph Hospital. And for weeks, the government can't work out how to solve the water problem in Helen Joseph and Rahima Musa. We come out of a wave, and we're supposed to do catch-up surgery. But you can't put a catch-up surgery because there's no water. The south side of Joburg is not functioning, so there's no water in the hospitals. And nobody can think, can you put a borehole? Because everybody's got to fill in a lot of forms and a lot of papers because government doesn't understand 3 words. Urgency, emergency, and disaster is not in the vocabulary of government. Everything needs to be written down, papers, they have to do things. And this is a crisis. You can't say, I'll do it in 4 weeks' time. People are going to die in 4 weeks' time. You need to fix the system. I said the systems have to be fixed up. So we intervene. In 48 hours, we drill Helen Joseph. My geologist is sitting in Namibia. He pinpointed a spot exactly in the car park, in the corner, near the road, in Rahima Musa, and we hit 12,000 liters per hour. Now, why couldn't all the geologists and the scientists from government do that? What was the big crisis? Why couldn't we do that? We have to fix the system of intervention in the country. The next example, we do the balls, we go to different beds in the hospitals, we don't have enough beds. So they got patients, they got oxygen point, but they don't have beds. So we started putting beds into the hospital. And then as you go along, a new phase has come up. Hospitals need infrastructure upgrade. Now, this is where you talked the last part, where you introduced in the introduction what role everybody's got to play. We need the private sector participation. We need medical aid societies. We need medical companies. We need corporates who are not medical. Everybody to get involved together. To be fair to government, 5.2 million people's taxes can't look after 60 million people. It's impossible. And with all the difficulty, with the drop in the economy, jobs shed, decreased collection from SARS, decreased tax collection, the budget that got depleted by COVID itself, there's just not enough money to deal with the health crisis or any other crisis in the country. That's why we need buy-in for different things. But today we're talking about health. So in health, we need buy-in from corporates to help upgrade hospitals. If you ask me for the next 3 years for Mandela Day, don't give out food parcels. Don't give teddy bears. Don't give hygiene packs. For the next 3 years, let's upgrade infrastructure in this country. Be it classrooms at school, school toilets, balls at schools, balls at communities, balls in hospitals, upgrade to the hospital facilities itself, and this is what we're driving the corporates towards. And to the credit of the corporates, before, the CSI was just there to tick the register. Okay, 95, 90%, be black recipients, tick the register. Tax benefit, yes, tick the register. Did some goodness, tick the register. Nothing serious, nothing concrete. It was just to tick the register and they can carry on with life. To their credit, with COVID-19 itself, the CEOs got involved and said, what do we have to do? How do we fix the country? How to hold people up? And how do we go forward? Infrastructure upgrade. Right now, I mean, when you're already shortage of medical personnel, the government puts a moratorium. There are no posts, all posts are frozen. How the hell can you run a system with all the posts frozen? If somebody dies, retires, gets sick, those posts are not filled. So few people to deal with so many patients. The patient count is increasing because post-COVID, they're all coming back with all the conditions. So the number of patients are multiplying and the number of staff are depleting. What are you going to do to the health system? You're going to collapse it. Because the personnel, machines don't run the system. People run the system. The people are going to be depleted. We need to relook, ask the finance minister to relook at budgets. You can't have a moratorium on posts. You can spend 50 million rand on doctors from outside the country, but you can't give jobs to doctors inside the country. You can't register your own doctors, South African doctors that have studied overseas, but you can bring doctors who come from outside countries into our country. Politics cannot play a role. This is about the service of health in the country. We need to fix the system. And besides paying additional staff, right now, if there's no money, we make a call to corporates. Let's pay for a registrar. You cut the registrar post by 50%. What does that mean? There's a failure in academic medicine. There will be no further teaching. And all the interns for the last 2 years, sorry to all the medical schools, your interns have learned medicine by correspondence in the last 2 years. They don't know what the hell's going on. And I don't blame them because they couldn't do any teaching and they were scared. And you were scared of liability. So those interns have to be retrained, the students for the last 2 years. And it is upon all the healthcare workers and the consultants and the registrars to give confidence to those kids who are now for the last 2 years not sure of themselves. But how can these consultants and registrars do the training when they're so short of manpower? It can't happen. So we need corporates to get involved to pay for registrars and consultants and more staff, more nurses, more paramedics, more physiotherapists, more dietitians, more OT, more physiotherapists and OT. And we need to train, as the government, psychologists. When a healthcare worker says, I need a psychologist, then you know we got a serious problem. Because doctors and healthcare workers say, nah, we don't have a problem. Me macho. The ego takes over you. Doctors don't have mental problems. They don't have psychological problems. The moment they start saying it, not one, but on every medical check in the country, then you know we got a serious problem in the country in terms of mental health. And what do universities do? They protect their turf. No, we can only do 21 psychology students. 7 clinical, 7 counseling, 7 educational. It doesn't make any sense to me. You're talking about job creation. We don't have service-oriented job creation. We need psychologists in the country for the healthcare workers, for the teachers, for the SAPS, for the parents who lost kids, for the kids who lost parents, for those who lost jobs, for the companies that collapsed. And you want to train 21 psychologists. We need to train and fix the system where the healthcare system looks at providing more psychologists. So many kids are left at a disadvantage for OT. There's not enough OT. I mean, and the catch-up surgery. The next phase, because my time is almost up. So, supporting healthcare workers in every field. Universities have to look at training more psychologists. Corporates have to look at funding people to work, the infrastructure upgrade. And the next thing to catch up with. People are waiting 4 to 5 years for an operation. They'll die long before the operation happens. If not, they will suffer for 5 years. They need prosthesis, hip and knee replacement, cataracts. I mean, a simple procedure, a guy sees nothing, and within a few minutes, he sees everything. Why are we denying people that kind of support? The amazing thing is, we couldn't find money to pay healthcare workers. We couldn't find money to upgrade hospitals. We couldn't find money to put in more machines, but we could find money to fund the COVID pandemic. How do you explain that? COVID pandemic overran everything. There's people with HIV/AIDS complications now. If we're going to go back 20 years. TB is getting complicated, we're going to go back 20 years. All the cancer is going to get complicated. It means prolonged hospital visits, more operations, more time waste, more hospital bed space, more hospital time. We're going to lose all that space and time. How much more money is going to be on the health system? Again, corporates, you guys have to come on board to help for the next 2 to 3 years to help pay for catch-up surgery. We need to do catch-up surgery, catch-up procedures, and we have to help in the best way possible. Now, there's 2 ways of doing that. One is we can send doctors from the private sector into the public sector, but there's always a complication. We can do that. In some hospitals, it's working. But since we've got such a backlog of patients within the public system, you guys have a lot of private hospitals that have 35% free capacity or 20% capacity. You're paying your staff in any case for the day. They're doing nothing for those few hours that they're available. Why don't you take these patients from the public sector and put them into your hospital and do something as a CSI? Yes, you may not say you cannot do it for free, but there is some point you can do it at a minimum cost. And maybe that minimum cost, government can't pay for it, but the private sector, the other non-medical type of private sector could come in and say, there's a CSI benefit. I'll pay today, I'll pay for 20 people to do this kind of operation. I'll pay for 20 cataracts. I'll pay for this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, this country needs hope and it needs dignity. Why should a rich child or the parent from a rich child go to a private hospital and swipes the card, half an hour later the problem is solved? But the same type of child with the same type of condition in rural Transkei will wait for an ambulance that may never come, for a taxi that's not available, on the road gets messed up in the rain that can't work, go to a health facility that has no staff or limited staff, not their fault, we didn't support them with extra staff, to go to an infrastructure that's not functional. They walk into the place and look at it as, oh, I don't think I'm going to get healed here, I'm going to die inside here. That kind of mentality. And we're going to, you kill people psychologically. What would the mothers say? What hope do you have? And by the afternoon, the pharmacy is closed, come back tomorrow, or there's not enough medication. Why should that be allowed in this country? It should never be allowed. Those are the kind of things we have to fix. And it's not insolvable. You can fix the system. And medical aid societies, you guys have discussions about NHI and want to contribute and want things done. Nobody trusts you. Nobody trusts you, medical aid societies. Not the public, not the government, everybody else. You want to make a contribution? Start putting in money into the public sector. Show goodwill from your side and start putting it in the public sector. And let's say how we can improve as a medical group. And say, okay, yes, we want to contribute to the NHI, to the country, and the government itself cannot be fixed on its position. The government itself should come to the table and let's see how we can find a dialogue to change the system or to find an equitable system. To me, NHI, my own understanding is anybody who helps somebody from the public sector outside the public sector, that is NHI. So if anybody funds a person, improves his eyesight, helps his operation, makes things better, it takes somebody, let's call it a grid system. There's 60 million people on the grid. 10 million people can look after themselves. Others can have a middle class, a family people can support them. They get off the system. And every other person on the system that private sector intervention takes off the grid, we've made a difference to the life of somebody in this country. So yes, in conclusion, government can't do this alone. But government has got to fix its systems where people cannot be blocked, people cannot be said they can't speak openly. They have to put in more staff, look at the needs of the people, and look at it objectively. Not thinking, oh, these people speak. What does it say about my incapacity or my qualifications or my capability? There's no place for ego. We are here to save lives. And it has to be done in a correct manner. And of course, there's 5 critical elements. Healthcare workers, personnel, buildings, infrastructure. 3, equipment. I mean, the moratorium says we will not fix machines. We will not buy new machines. So people might have to stay at home. It doesn't make any sense. Number 4, maintenance. We've built a private hospital and a government hospital at the same time. After 5 years, the government hospital is falling apart. And the private hospital is still working the same way. We need to have systems of maintenance, and we have to have systems of management. These are the 5 crucial principles to make the hospital's environment, health environment, work well. And of course, corporates, we need buy-in from you guys for the next 2 to 3 years to help government get its taxes into account, its finances back into position, so that we can help people in the next 3 years, not waiting. We can't have the queue getting to 7 years and 9 years. That queue has to get to 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, and no queue. And the only way we can do that is corporate, private, the public, all together. Thank you very much.